So AO2 being, I should say, IE for social media, because AO2 is pretty much applying, so we can use the data which we have analyzed. Or no, we haven't analyzed it yet, or which we have inputted to find out different information. So let's say if it's for social media, then we can use it to find out what, let's say for example, what users do. Find out perhaps features that aren't used. We could also find what areas on the, I should say, platform are used most. For example, do people use it a lot of the texting area of the site? Do people use a lot of the video content area of the site? Do people use it to post a lot of pictures? Which areas you pretty much use. So from that, we can then go on to the AO3 point, which would be how we use this data. So using this data, we can identify areas to focus attention on. So from a developer standpoint, you would use this data to figure out where you would focus the most of your attention on. And as a result, what's a consequence of that is that we can save money and time. So for example, let's just say we're taking this AO2 point where we're finding features that aren't used, and this as a consequence would allow us to save money and time because we are able to identify areas that aren't used. So through from a business standpoint, you can maximize your profit here and reduce your costs. And now maybe we figure out features that aren't being used, or what users spend a lot of time on, and if you want to engage them back onto activities which you would like them to focus on, you can perhaps find a new way to increase the user attention on a specific area of the app, like having a DLC or a sort of update to further make the area of the app more engaging, or a specific area. And you could also perhaps target new features. New features at specific areas of the platform, or perhaps if you're looking for a specific target market, at a specific group. Now, what this means is that you can target new features at specific areas or perhaps at specific groups. Now, this would be if you are looking to maybe communicate a message towards the younger generation, then you can maybe implement a new feature where if you are less than a certain age, you're only allowed a limited time on the app, which has been implemented by social media platforms already. But you can have different sort of examples which you go on from that area of the topic is heuristics. So before I get on to what OCR defines as heuristics, it's important to have a sort of overview of what it really is. So in situations where finding a exact solution may be unrealistic, this can be due to hardware limitations, for example. And in this situation, a solution that has a high probability of being correct may be acceptable. So, what heuristics is that approaches to not provide the best and optimal answer, but would produce results which are good enough, and they are referred to as a rule of thumb. Asking, yes, this is all just words, what does it mean? Well, so providing some context behind it, in real life, we pretty much come across heuristics all the time. So if we are, let's just say, we are posed onto the spot and asked a question, now we would give Ian a answer back, which is an immediate answer of what the knowledge we have at the correct time. Although we don't frame it in an optimal way, we give an answer which is best, good enough, and maybe acceptable. We don't have a proper, conclusive, absolutely 100% perfect answer, do we? So, hence why using heuristics, we can find a solution which is, it is not like exact, but it is good enough in terms of being able to be used. So we would call this, we'll refer this to as a rule of thumb. So what the OCR definition is that a heuristic, what can I find a heuristic approach is a rule of thumb. Slash, they also ask you, like, in different mark schemes, they might say, was heuristics? And you would be like, a heuristic approach is a rule of thumb. Or, some other mark schemes might say it as an educated guess approach. So make sure you add in both, because mark schemes can change depending on the mood of the guy creating the exam. Really funny. It is, well, you can't really trust OCR in this sort of aspect, but that's why memorizing is sort of make two or combined definitions is the best way to going towards computer science. So then they might ask you, for example, what is heuristics? Saying this in line is suffice enough to get you a mark, but they might ask you to extend on it, and then you would pretty much, the other sort of areas you can talk about it is as it is used when it is unfeasible to find the optimal result. So when I was giving you guys the overview, this is pretty much what I meant. So it is used when it's unfeasible to find the optimal result. So as a result, this leads to a good enough, if I can type result, so just make sure we get that bit in. And it is not 100% reliable, but it is still good enough to be used. Now, let me give you an example. So, using heuristics when crossing a road. Now, they might, who knows if OCR might ask you, but they would pretty much do like to throw in a few application questions. So, road. How is heuristics used when crossing a road? So, it's pretty much a bit of common sense if you think about it. You're on the road. Let's just say you're on the zebra crossing, and you have clicked or pressed the signal, and now what we would do is that we're not looking at all the data about, perhaps, like there might be like a sign on the vehicle speeds being 30 miles per hour. We are not looking at that. We are only looking for the data which is most likely able to help us and make a judgment based on that experience, or our rule of thumb. We aren't going to be assessing all different possibilities of are the signals before this signal, is that on a red color? Are the signals before that on a red color? Oh yeah, if they all are, then it's we should cross regardless of the signal we're standing on. So breaking it down in terms of just on the current situation at hand, and using a rule of thumb approach in terms of finding your result. Like again, if like I said in the example before, if you want to increase your chances of having a successful cross when crossing the road, you do not want to be waiting for the exact time when the whole of that region, all of those signals are red. That is again a waste of time and is not the most ideal approach for that. So, just for our situation, we would just look at our signal, make sure when that's red, then we would, that's optimal enough to cross the road. We don't need all the whole signals in that area to be red. Now, that's for crossing the road. Now, OCR would ask you perhaps different examples of heuristics. So, if they do ask you that, you need to know these examples. They have came up in marking before. Now, heuristic examples can go towards looking. So, heuristics, they start off by looking at behaviors rather than the structure. So just remember that thing right there. So they look at behavior rather than the structure. That's one bit of what heuristics are. So if OCR asks you what is not the definition, but what is heuristics in terms of this aspect or this application, then talk about heuristics is looking at a behavior rather than the whole structure. For example, you might find suspicious activity, even if it is disguised novelly. You would look at the behavior of the suspicious activity. You would not look at like fully understanding the structure of it, which in context is perhaps understanding the backbone of what it is, what the suspicious activity can do. You would pretty much work on understanding its behavior for that. Heuristics also examine the the susceptibility of big word right there, susceptibility of the system to possible attacks. So going back to the summary quickly, heuristics look at the behavior rather than the structure. Heuristics also examine the susceptibility of the system to possible attacks. Heuristics can also, in terms of virus and anti-malware handling and those sort of areas, is that heuristics can simulate possible effects of different attacks, e.g. viruses, for example. And this is primarily the main contents of 2.2.2 computational methods. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I hope it is useful.